Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Last night, you spent 2 hours deciding what to wear to the party. This morning, it'll take you 2 minutes to list it on Depop and make your money back. Just grab your phone, snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. The sheer dress and platform heels you'll never wear again? There's a birthday girl searching for them right now. Your one-and-done look is about to pay for your next night out. Or at least the ride home. Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
Welcome to the Susan Lopresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to a woman's life, her health, and all aspects of navigating the midlife landscape. We talk a lot about functional medicine and ways that we could heal and really thrive in the next chapter of our lives. And today I'd like to welcome a very special guest. His name is Kevin Toman. And after nearly 40 years in veterinarian medicine, Kevin's passion is helping pets and the people who love them live longer, healthier, and happier lives through a functional wellness approach. Drawing from decades of hands-on experience, Kevin has seen both the limitations of conventional care and the incredible results that can happen when we look deeper at the root causes of health challenges. His work focuses on evidence-based supplements, longevity supportive therapies such as rapamycin, nutrition, lifestyle changes, and holistic strategies that are designed to improve quality of life for the entire household. Kevin believes our pets are often reflections of our own environment, habits, and well-being, and that caring for them can inspire us to care more deeply for ourselves. For many women, navigating midlife transitions, stress, and the desire to age vibrantly, this conversation offers a fresh and heartwarming perspective on healing, longevity, and the special bond that we share with our animals. Join us for an enlightening episode as Kevin shares stories, practical guidance, and wisdom on how healthier pets can help create healthier, happier humans as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Kevin to our podcast. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today. I'm a huge animal lover, and this topic that we're going to talk about today is something that I've been waiting for a very long time. So thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much, Susan. Listen, as somebody who's just tiptoeing into this podcasting world, I'm just beginning to understand how much work goes into running a weekly podcast or a recurrent podcast. And so my hat is off to you. I hope your listeners understand how much you put into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it because it is a lot of work, but it's very enjoyable. And I learn every single week from my guests. And I'm excited today because we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is pets. And I love all animals. I really do. But dogs are very near and dear to my heart. So I want to begin by asking you, after nearly 40 years in veterinary medicine, what first inspired you to move beyond traditional care and explore a more functional and holistic approach to pet health?
I'd answer that in a couple of different ways because the functional and holistic part of things came earlier in my veterinary career, and a quick summary of that would be this, in all honesty. I'll start by by opening my heart to you, and that is when I was about 44 or so, I was diagnosed with what can be a fatal cancer. And luckily, that diagnosis was incorrect. And I learned that after a bunch of additional tests. But what I learned, Susan, is that I do have a precursor to this condition called myeloma. And so logic would tell both of us that if I have a precursor condition, that could transform into full cancer. I want to do everything I can to prevent that. And what I found doing the research back then was that there was not one single drug that could prevent the transformation of my pre-malignancy to malignancy. But there was a spice called curcumin. And so that opened my door into the use of herbal therapy or integrative therapy, not just for myself, Susan, but also for the patients in my care. And so, in direct answer to your question, my emphasis on pet longevity came around through the loss of my own dog and the loss of my golden retriever, a girl named Brooke. And for 12 years, Susan, she was the apple of my eye. We were never apart during that 12 years. She was my confidant. She was my fishing partner when I lived in Colorado, and I loved her with all my heart. And when I lost her, I looked around and thought, gosh, there is a better way. We can do more for our older pets. And that's what started my interest in longevity science.
Yeah, that was my first dog, was a golden retriever, female. Her name was Rusty. And she
Oh,
had
okay.
mange. That was her issue. She had all kinds of skin conditions. And anyway, she didn't last that long, actually. My brother moved and he took her with him, and she didn't live, I think she lived to about 8 or 9, which is kind of
Yeah.
young still.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn here. I have a little golden retriever puppy named
Hi,
Annabelle.
beautiful.
Right,
Oh my
right,
goodness.
right alongside me here. And so I show you Annabelle, not just because I think she's a cute girl, but
She's
also
adorable.
because I understand. Listen, golden retrievers are wonderful dogs, Susan, but you and I both have to understand that they're about 5 times more likely to develop cancer during their
Yes.
life than any other breed of dog. And in fact, the Harvard Medical School, is actually running a study right now on why that might be. But when I look at Annabelle as an 18-month-old puppy, the reality is that I'm looking very hard at ways to prevent cancer. Everything from diets to supplements to some of the prescription longevity drugs that I use on a daily basis. It matters to me.
Yes. And so they don't know why it is that they are likely to develop cancer.
It's clearly a genetic issue, but we
Okay.
don't know exactly what at this point in time. And so, yeah, there is a nationwide study that is sponsored by the Harvard Medical School in an effort to understand that, because not just because they love golden retrievers like you and I do, but also because we think that dogs, in many respects, are in fact just small humans from a medical perspective. And hear me out on that because obviously they look a little bit differently, but they are in the same environment that you and I are in. It's just simply that they live a shorter period. And so many medical schools look at them and think, gosh, these domestic dogs, they really are an analog for the humans that live 70 or 80, 90 years of age. And we can get to those study results in 10 or 12 years. And so there is a logic to it when you think about it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you often speak about helping pets live longer and healthier lives. What are some of the biggest factors that influence longevity in animals?
I would submit to you, Susan, that they are the very same things that influence longevity for humans
In
as well.
humans.
And so when I think of longevity science, I think of it as really four pillars or four legs to that chair. The first is diet and lifestyle, and I can talk ad nauseum about that. The second is traditional veterinary care and what traditional veterinary care really brings to the table and what we should avoid as well. The third component to it is supplements. But as you and I both know, there's a tremendous amount of, let's just say malarkey, let's just say baloney when it comes to the supplement world in both humans and pets. And then the fourth contributor to longevity is actually the use of prescription longevity drugs like rapamycin and acarbose, which have been proven to extend lifespan by up to 14% in every mammal species studied to date. So everything ranging from diet, from simple things, actually ways that you can save money on diets instead of spending money, to prescription longevity drugs that may cost 100 or 150 bucks a month. There are a lot of different ways to help our pets, or for that matter, to help ourselves live longer.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Get 2 times membership rewards points per dollar on eligible purchases in key business categories, as well as on each eligible purchase of $5,000 or more, on up to $2 million in eligible purchases per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Okay, so let's start with lifestyle for a
Okay.
pet. What do you
You're on.
suggest as far as lifestyle goes?
Okay. Yeah. And so if you and I lived together, Susan, and we were building a home centered around the needs of our golden retrievers, it would be a one level home because every time dogs go up and down the stairs, they are hurting themselves. Now, it's on a microscopic basis, on a cumulative basis. So you and I don't see those changes, but dogs are damaging their joints as they go up and down stairs. That home would have carpet instead of hardwood floors or tile. Because I'll bet when you had Rusty and you came home from work, she had a very definite traffic pattern, Susan. She would run down the hall, turn right to get into the kitchen, skid around the corner, and run down the entry to the front door. But in all seriousness, whenever a dog slips and falls, they are hurting themselves, and these falls add up over time. Likewise, if you and I were to take a dog to a park, throwing a tennis ball or something like that at low level for them in one line is absolutely a healthy approach to their exercise. But if you and I use a frisbee or use one of those odd-shaped rubber kongs that bounce all over the place so that dogs are jumping and landing awkwardly as part of their play, that's another risk factor, Susan. And over a 40-year veterinary career, I cannot count the number of dogs who went to a dog park or went to a human park bearing weight on all four legs but carrying a frisbee in their mouth and came back limping on one leg, having ruptured an ACL by jumping and landing wrong to catch that frisbee. And so there are very definitely benefits to exercise from a longevity perspective, but there are also very real risks to the wrong form of exercise, Susan.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of pet owners don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. In general, they think, oh, isn't it cute to have my dog jump up, my foot and a half or 2 foot tall dog jump up 3 or 4 feet in the air. And if they slip and fall or stumble when they land, it's just not that big a deal. But the reality, Susan, it is.
And what about diet? And how do you
Okay.
feel about giving your dog table food and treats and all of that?
All right. So I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. First off, Annabelle is my child. I have a girlfriend and I'm 66, but the reality is that she is my child. And so if you and I want to spoil our children, I think we should. But let's try to do it as healthfully as possible. And so when I think about diet for pets, Susan, I would tell you that in, I'll take a step back. Speaking to prescription longevity drugs, it's very easy for you, Susan, to spend $100 a month with any prescription longevity drugs, whether it's for you or for your pet. But what if I told you that perhaps the single easiest way to help your pet live longer would actually cost you less? It's true because in every species studied to date, Susan, whether we're talking about elephants or fish, zebras or cats or cattle or dogs or cats or humans, the one way we know that is consistently the best way to extend life is by feeding ourselves less. or by feeding our pets less. That was pointed out very eloquently by a study by the Purina company, which makes dog food, about 15 years ago, Susan, where they divided litters of Labrador Retriever puppies in two. So that if you had a litter of eight, four puppies were on one side of the fence, four puppies were on the other. And one half of these litters were fed as much as they want to eat. And speaking as an ex-Labrador Retriever dad, I can tell you, Susan, that's a lot of food. And the other half of these puppies were fed 75% of their normal maintenance ration. And then they were followed throughout their lives. Same environment, same handlers, same diet, just different amounts of it. Same vaccines, same everything. And what they found over their lifetime, Susan, was that the thinner dogs lived 1.8 years longer than did the dogs who were fed more food. And so that's a very clear study. There's no other explanation other than the fact that for our dogs, the less they eat, the longer they will live. Now, the second component to that is dietary quality. And here's what you were alluding to. Because listen, I do feed Annabelle. I give her treats, for instance. But here's the thing. I mentioned earlier that golden retrievers, Susan, are 5 times more likely to die from cancer than any other breed. So therefore, I home cook for Annabelle, and I'm happy to explain a little bit more about that. But as an example, I cook her meats on a rotational basis. I give her fruits on a rotational basis. But every meal, Susan, contains broccoli. Why? Not just because it's a great source of fiber, but because broccoli actually contains a cancer-fighting ingredient called sulforaphane. And so with every meal, I'm doing what I can to help Annabelle prevent cancer.
What's your feeling on raw food for a dog?
Yeah. Here's another mistake that I've made in my life, Susan. So I'm going to raise my hand and say, listen, I was wrong in some of the things that I assumed. Because for 50 years of my life, I fed my dogs kibbles. And I thought, gosh, they're great nutrition. They're certainly the easiest. Most times they are the cheapest way to feed our pets. But over the last 7 to 8 years, Susan, there's been increasing evidence that kibbles are actually a very unhealthy way to feed our pets. Why? Because each one of those kibbles, each one of those microscopic, small little kibbles,
Yeah.
is glommed together. It's held in that kibbled shape by extra starch or sugars. And then those sugars are run through a high temperature oven at 450 to 500 degrees. And what happens is those sugars then are turned into these little carcinogens, these little precancerous molecules called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Now, that's painting with a broad brush, but the reality is that the science is clear. Kibbles are not as healthy as you and I would in terms of feeding our pets, either our dogs or our cats, if we want them to live as long as possible. So, what do we do instead? In large part, Susan, the reality for both dogs and cats is that the closer to our quote Mediterranean diets, a balanced diet that consists of fresh meats or less processed meats, vegetables and fruits is clearly the best way to feed our pets as well from a longevity perspective. And when you think about raw diets, you don't get much closer to the farm than a raw diet. And it's an excellent choice for feeding both dogs and cats. Now, here's the thing we have to be aware of, though, because in those 40 years of veterinary practice, Susan, I saw 2 dogs die from eating raw food. Why? Because the kibble diets or the canned diets that you and I have spoken about have had all the bacteria within them killed by that high heat or by the pasteurization process. But raw diets, by definition, lack that bacterial cleansing. And so the E. coli, the salmonella bacteria that you read about every once in a while in the newspaper are very definite risks for pets fed raw diets. And for that matter, for you and me as we prepare those raw diets. So there are documented instances of humans getting E. coli in particular by preparing raw diets for their pets. So these are small health risks, but they are very real health risks. And what they point to, Susan, is that although raw diets are a very healthy way to feed our pets, we darn sure better understand who makes those diets, and how they help to prevent bacterial contamination.
So you need to do your research on the company that you're buying it from.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, do you feed your little darling over there raw food or no?
I don't feed her raw food. I home cook for her though.
Okay.
And so and I mentioned that a little bit earlier. And here's what I do. I typically use a combination of either ground chicken or ground turkey as the base. And to that, I add a rotational mix of vegetables and fruits. And again, every meal that she eats does contain broccoli because of its anti-cancer properties. And so one of the things that your listeners should understand, Susan, is this. One of the major veterinary consulting firms did a study on home cooked diets for our pets, and they found that almost 80% of those diets, Susan, were nutritionally unbalanced, which could create long term health issues for our pets. And so, if, like me, you want to use a home cooked diet, it's very important that you either A, rotate the source of your protein, rotate the vegetables, etc., so that you're giving your pets a broad variety of nutrients, or you can send a list of the ingredients that you are using to any one of several different veterinary nutritional consulting companies on the web. One of them, as an example, is a company called Balance It, BALANCEIT.com. And I have no commercial interest, I have no financial interest with recommending them. But my point, Susan, is that there are a number of different services that you and I can pay a small amount of money to make sure that the home cooked diets that you and I are using for our pets are nutritionally adequate.
Okay. Are there any vegetables that are not safe for a pet that should be avoided that you know of?
In small quantities, I'm going to tell you no. Now, every veterinary student, as they go through veterinary school, Susan, is told, listen, chocolate can poison your pets.
Yeah.
Garlic can poison your pets. Grapes can poison your pets. And I suppose at high doses, every one of those things is true. I would tell you that I had a Bernese Mountain Dog before I had my Golden, and he was a big 100-pound dog. And one time during the holidays, I left a 1 pound bag of Hershey's Kisses up on the dashboard of my car. And he reached up there and he ate a 1 pound bag of Hershey's Kisses. He left only the plastic liner. And did this 100-pound dog run into any health issues whatsoever? No, he did not, Susan, but he pooped multicolored tin foil for the next 2 or 3 days. And that was the only downside to his health. And so the moral to the story is that I would not have been able to get away with that if he were a 5 pound or a 10 pound
Right.
Chihuahua. But let's just say in general terms that virtually every vegetable, every fruit is safe for dogs if used appropriately. But if that 5 or 10 pound Chihuahua were to eat too much in the way of garlic or too much in the way of onions or too many grapes, yeah, there are potential issues that could occur. But you and I would have to work pretty darn hard to make them happen.
Yes. I was laughing hysterical about your dog eating the chocolate because I used to have a Rottweiler and it was Halloween and someone gave my daughter this giant Hershey Kiss and it was up on a table and I came
I
home
know
from
where the
work.
story's going. Yeah.
I came home from work and I found tinfoil all over the house and I was like, what the heck is this? And finally I realized he ate the Hershey Kiss. Besides the aluminum foil all over, the next morning there were drops of poop all over. He was
Yeah. Yeah.
was
And so
fine. He was fine.
yeah. Yeah. And so, listen, it's in large part, Susan, the reality is pets are just small people. And
Yeah.
so if you feed something in moderation, the reality is there's very little health issue that's going to come from it. But there's no accounting the same way that I might develop an upset stomach or diarrhea from a food that I'm sensitive to. The same thing occurs for our pet. And
Right.
so we always have to learn what our pets tell us. We have to listen to what they say, don't we?
Yes,
And a couple of
absolutely.
different thoughts for you before I turn loose of the whole diet topic. And that is that, Susan, one of the things that I have seen over the 40 years that I've been in veterinary practice is people using vegetable or even vegan diets on their pets. And I want to make it absolutely clear. Dogs are perfectly okay with vegetarian diets, perfectly okay with vegan diets. But here's the thing, Susan, cats are not. Cats need meat to survive. And if you and I try to make a vegetarian or a vegan out of a cat, we will kill them. And I have seen that happen in my career. So I want to make sure that your listeners, if they don't take anything else from this little podcast, they understand that they cannot feed their cats just vegetables and have them survive. Cats are obligate carnivores, and we need to feed them like that. The other suggestion I'm going to make to you is that about 20 years ago, there was this huge influx of grain-free dog foods into the pet market. And it made absolutely logical sense, Susan. Who wants to look at the bag of the food that we're using for our dogs and see corn and wheat and whatever the case, rice, rather than the whole meats that you and I associate with a healthy diet? Makes absolute sense. But here's the thing. Within about 18 months after grain-free diets were introduced into the market, we saw this huge increase in heart problems in large breed dogs. And what we learned, Susan, is that many grain-free diets are deficient in an essential fatty acid called taurine. And if our diets are deficient in taurine, what's the next step? Heart problems. And so, if your listeners are using a grain-free diet in their dogs or in their cats, please, here's the other take-home message I'll give you. Please make sure that your pet has adequate taurine in that, either in that diet or buy a taurine supplement. Gosh, you can buy it from me, but you can buy taurine in a bazillion different spots, and that will keep your pets healthy, your pets' hearts healthy as you use a grain-free diet.
Okay, thank you for that advice. So now I want to go on to ask you about pets' health often mirrors the lifestyle and the environment of the family that they live with. How is that? Because you're in
So I'm
agreement
going
with that
to tell
statement.
you, I think I know where you're heading, but let me tell you an anecdote here. I alluded earlier, Susan, to the fact that the easiest way, the cheapest way for you and me to extend our pet's life, and quite possibly our life, are simply by eating less.
Yeah.
When you talk about lifestyle, when you ask a question about how the human and pet lifestyles mirror each other, I would tell you this. About 10 years ago was a heyday of weight loss shows on TV, like The Biggest Loser, for
Yeah.
instance. And so at that point in time, I was running a pretty good sized practice out here in California. And I thought, Susan, what a great practice builder. What a great thing. I'm going to have a contest where I'm going to create the biggest loser contest for all the pets in my practice. And whoever won that contest, I'd give $1,000 worth of veterinary care to over the next year. I'm going to put it in the paper. I'm going to be a local celebrity. So I sent out an email request to 5,000, actually 5,100 clients that I had in my practice at that point in time, saying, listen, if you think your pet is heavy, let's have this biggest loser content. And I'm going to make a local celebrity out of your dog or out of your cat. Do you know how many pet parents responded out of 5,100 to a request for an obese pet? Zero. Not one pet parent emailed me back saying my dog or my cat is obese and I want to be a part of this biggest loser contest. And so what that tells us, unfortunately, because listen, I know quite clearly that many of those pets were obese. Saw them on a daily basis, but nobody wants to recognize their pets as being obese because I think in all honesty, there is. You look at your pet and you see yourself a little bit in the mirror of what that pet looks like. And so absolutely. That's a funny little anecdote that was not well explained, but it made me realize how closely our pets' lifestyles do mirror ours. And one of the things that we see, Susan, is that pets are absolutely susceptible to the same side effects of smoking. So my mother, for instance, was a huge smoker throughout her life. And what we know now is that my pets inhaling that secondhand smoke are absolutely more at risk for the lung cancer, for the bladder cancer, the same types of cancer that affect humans who have been smoking throughout their whole lives. And we've alluded a couple different times to diets, but if you and I are sitting on the sofa together eating potato chips, and our dogs are, because they're our love children, are getting those same potato chips, they're going to be prone to the same risk, the same high cholesterol, the same obesity issues. And so, yes, there's absolute crossover when it comes to lifestyle risks amongst humans and pets that live in the same family.
Yeah, that's true. What are some common health issues that you see in pets today that could be avoided? Or
And the biggest one is obesity. I'll be honest with you, Susan, and I believe that this is the same thing on the human side because obesity sets the table not just for diabetes, but also for cancer, for orthopedic problems, and in humans anyway, cognitive disease. And so the reality is that a lot of different health issues can be triggered just by obesity. And so, therefore, one of the easiest ways to prevent those health issues is to maintain a healthy body weight. But day in and day out, for veterinarians, the single most common health problem, the single most common reason that dogs or cats walk into a veterinary clinic is skin disease. And that is something that has direct dietary implications for us because probably 70% of the time, Susan, these skin diseases are allergic in origin. Now, listen, when I talk about allergies, absolutely. Pets can be allergic to the same inhaled pollens that create hay fever for you and me. But one of the most common reasons that we see for skin problems in dogs or cats is actually dietary allergies. So it's funny, everything keeps circling back around to diets playing such a large role in the longevity of our pets.
do you know specifically what causes these allergies? Is there one ingredient? Is it wheat? Is it dairy?
Actually, it's funny that you ask because the single most common allergen, the American Association of Veterinary Dermatologists did a study in the last 5 or 6 years. The single most common allergen in dog diets is actually beef.
Oh,
And so, for that reason, I routinely recommend a chicken or a fish-based diet for virtually every pet that is prone to skin disease. The second, and you're right, the second, as an aside, was actually wheat. And the same gluten-free movement that is so common in humans these days would also benefit our pets as well.
so do you think that gluten does affect pets?
I think it does, but probably just like with humans. I think there is a percentage of pets that does have problems with glutens. It's probably a little bit smaller than we think. And I suspect in all candor that the percentage of humans that actually have problems with gluten is perhaps a little smaller than the people who espouse that theory. But the reality is that pets are just like us humans in that we can all be sensitive to different products, Susan, whether
Yeah.
it's beef, whether it's wheat. The reality is that every one of us has that genetic chink in our armor.
Yes. So you mentioned evidence-based supplements. Which supplements have shown the most promise for supporting our pets' wellness and longevity?
All right, let's turn that question around, Susan, and say which supplements have been disproven over the last few years.
Okay.
Because here's another, I'm emphasizing not just the role of diet in longevity science, but I'm also trying to emphasize my mistakes for some of the listeners in your crowd. And as an example, I sold glucosamine and chondroitin products within my practice for probably 20 years, Susan, because I was told by the suppliers, by the makers, and by the current science that they were the very best way to naturally support our pets' joint health. But what if I told you that about 10 years ago, there was a series of studies that came out that just showed glucosamine and chondroitin products do not work in both humans or in pets to help naturally support our joint health. If you and I were to walk down the aisles of the Costco that is nearest to you, we would find supplement after supplement that contains glucosamine and chondroitin, ostensibly to protect our joint health. They just simply don't work, and science supports that. Another product that is quite commonly used in both humans and pets is resveratrol. the old red wine supplement that led to so many people thinking red wine has health benefits. If you and I wanted the benefits touted from resveratrol in the first study, you and I would have to drink almost 90 glasses of wine per day. And now that first day might be interesting, but I think I would rapidly lose interest in that longer term. And so resveratrol is another example of a natural supplement originally thought to improve health, Susan, but whose benefits just haven't been proven out long term. Now, there are very definitely supplements that will support your health, your joint health, or Annabelle's joint health. In particular, these days, we're going to point to CBD, we're going to point to fish oil. We're going to point to a product called undenatured type 2 collagen. And actually, as funny as it sounds, little ground up muscle shells, green lip muscle shells, all support joint health from a natural perspective. But many of the things that I, as a 66-year-old, used or recommended over the majority of my veterinary career have been proven not to work.
Interesting. So what about that rapamycin? And I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
No, atta girl, you did just fine. You did just fine. So rapamycin is a really interesting product. It is absolutely the most widely studied longevity drug in the world for both humans and for pets. And it originally was discovered on Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, which is how it got its name, rapamycin. And back in the day, it was used as an immune suppressive. And so if I were to give you my kidney, you would need to take an immune suppressant like rapamycin or several other drugs to help prevent your body from rejecting that kidney. But interestingly, what we found is that in mammal studies, in my studies, the animals that were on rapamycin extended lifespan by up to 14 to 30% sometimes. And so that led to a great deal of interest in the use of rapamycin, not as an immune suppressant, Susan, but rather as a drug that could extend lifespan. And study after study across mammal species has shown that rapamycin can extend lifespan by up to 14%. Now, in my patients, that's many times over 2 years for some of the pets in my care. How does rapamycin extend lifespan? Does in three different ways. It reduces cancer incidence, it reduces inflammation, and it supports heart health. And so these are wonderful things to think about. In fact, in cats, Susan, rapamycin has been proven to help prevent or support, let me try that sentence again. There's a heart disease, Susan, in cats called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM. It affects 1 out of 6 cats nationwide, and it is fatal. Rapamycin has been shown to prevent that disease and also to help if you are diagnosed with that disease as a cat. It slows the progression, sometimes even stops the progression of this fatal disease. And so if I were to look at one of the revolutions over my 40-year veterinary career, I would tell you quite clearly it's the use of rapamycin in pets to extend their lifespan by slowing the progression of heart disease and by reducing cancer incidence.
So why are we not all taking this drug every day? I
I
never
do.
even heard of it
I,
before.
I do.
Do
And
you
there
need a
are,
prescription for it?
yes, ma'am, you do. Yes, ma'am, you do. And you can go to any one of the, I would guarantee you that the New York City area has a bunch of longevity clinics set up for humans. As a 66-year-old, I pay more attention to that than I did back when I was your age.
I'm 66 as well.
Ah, you look much younger than I do.
Oh,
But at any rate, yeah, there's absolute logic at this point in time for all of us to consider rapamycin therapy. And I've spoken about the treatment benefits of rapamycin in pets. But one of the things that dog and cat parents are now understanding, Susan, is that if this drug is successful in reducing cancer incidence, why not use it on a preventive basis
yeah.
instead of on a treatment basis? And the same argument is being made in human science. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that as somebody, I believe I'm a scientist, Susan, and so science can change. And at some point, we might learn that there are more effective ways to increase our lifespan, or that rapamycin carries some long-term risk. But at this point in time, if you're asking me today, Susan, I will swear on the nearest Bible that the one drug that every human, every pet should be taking to extend lifespan, it should be rapamycin. It's safe and appears to be very effective.
And so, as a pet owner, you could go to your veterinarian and ask them for this prescription. How likely are they to give it to you?
Susan, that's a very
Because
good question
it's almost
because
taking away their business, because if the pet stays healthy, what do you need the vet
well,
for?
I suppose that's one way to look at it, isn't it? So I'm going to answer that in a different direction because I'd like to think that we're all in this to help our pets live longer. But in all seriousness, Susan, as somebody, I graduated from veterinary school back in 1986. And I would tell you that I believe the current model of veterinary medicine is broken. And why is that, Susan? For a number of different reasons, but one of the primary ones is there's been this huge influx of corporate ownership into the veterinary world. When I first graduated from veterinary school, Susan, every veterinary clinic was owned by a veterinarian or a mom and pop, so to speak. But now over half of the veterinary clinics in the United States are owned by corporate businesses, sometimes very large corporations, including the same company, the Mars Corporation, that actually makes candy bars.
Yeah.
And the Mars Corporation worldwide is the single largest owner of veterinary practices. And here's what that implies, Susan. Number one, there's been this arms race for veterinarians. And so these corporate practices are paying new graduates very high wages to come and join them in practice. And their compensation is dictated not just by a base salary, but also typically on a percentage. Many veterinarians are being paid a commission for every dollar that they generate in practice sales. In general, that translates into 21 to 25% of your veterinary bill. So if your veterinarian has a financial interest, a direct financial interest in creating more additional clinic income, the reality is that they are not well aligned with you and me as pet parents. What has happened is veterinary professionals have become less a service business and more a sales business, Susan. And that's one of the reasons that I hung out my own shingle, just working for myself as a longevity specialist, because I think that today's veterinary medical world is broken, and I'm a relationship guy. I want to build that relationship with you and Rosie, or Rosie or Rusty. I'm sorry.
Oh, Rusty, Rusty.
Rusty, I apologize. I got sidetracked there. I want to build that lifelong relationship with you and Rusty because that way I can offer you the very best in not just traditional veterinary, but also longevity science.
Yeah, okay.
So I guess so with that as a preamble, I realized I didn't answer your question, and that is how likely is a local veterinarian to prescribe rapamycin? I would say about 30% of the time that will occur.
Oh,
30% of the time. But
okay.
70% of the time, Susan, veterinarians will look at you like you sprang a leak. The reality is that most veterinarians have no clue as to what rapamycin is or its safe use. And so they're going to defer. And that's one of the reasons that I use telemedicine consults from one end of the country to the other is trying to help people understand not just the wise use of longevity drugs, but also how safely they can be integrated into that strategy.
I want to switch gears for a moment and talk about toxins. And the first thing that I want to talk about is flea and tick collars. What's your feeling on those? Are they safe for your pet to have on?
Susan, that's another great question. So I feel like I rattle on about some of these questions sometimes, but here are a couple things that I would say. Listen, fleas in particular can cause absolute misery for
Yeah.
our pets. If you've ever seen a dog or a cat who's allergic to fleas, sometimes they scratch, sometimes they chew so much that they create big bleeding areas on their body, and nobody wants that. Likewise, back in New York, you're probably very aware of the issues of Lyme disease as a
Yes.
tick-borne disease. As originally, there it was first diagnosed back in Lyme, Connecticut. And so there are clear risks associated with fleas and ticks for our pets. But unfortunately, there's increasing evidence that there are also risks, Susan, associated with the chemicals that you and I use to prevent those fleas and ticks. And so when you ask specifically about flea and tick collars, I'm going to tell you that yes, the way a flea or a tick collar works is by getting absorbed into the skin around that collar, around your neckline. And typically, these chemicals are stored in the fat layer that lives just underneath the skin, and it diffuses from one end of your body to the other. And so I do worry. I think there's increasing understanding in both humans and pets that no chemical is innocuous. The reality is that the Seresto collar, as an example, is marketed for almost a year's effectiveness. But that means chemicals are found in our pet's fat for that year's time. And I don't believe that's healthy. And likewise, some of the oral flea medications that you and I use have been proven to cause seizures in sensitive pets. And so my point, Susan, would be this. I fully understand that fleas and ticks are health and comfort risks for our pets. But I also believe that the products we use to prevent them can create health risks and shorten our pets' lives. So if we're going to use flea and tick products, let's use them for as short a period as possible. And let's use the safest products we can. Now, the safest products are typically not, Susan, the ones who will last for months at a time and with one administration. But as an example, we can use a pyrethrin-based shampoo or dip on our pets. And this is a natural product, Susan, derived from chrysanthemum flowers. And it will prevent fleas, it will prevent ticks, and it's absolutely safe for the pets in our care.
Is it
One
as
of the
effective?
It's not as effective
Okay.
as the products that persist for months in
Yeah.
our pets, but the reality is it is a much safer
Yeah.
product. And the other thing that I would point out is this. And I live in a flea area. I live in a tick area. But you and I can minimize the chances of our dogs in particular, to a lesser extent our cats. But if we look at our dogs in particular, Susan, what if I told you that ticks are just found in brush or in bushes? They're not found in grassy areas. So if ticks are your concern, the more time you spend in parks or on football fields or something like that, as opposed to letting your pet wander through the woods, the less likely you are to have a tick issue. Now, fleas are found in grassy areas, in shady areas, in moist areas, and they're especially found where other pets or other animals have been. So, if fleas are your concern, we have to look very closely at trying to let me back up. Fleas are essentially an infectious disease, Susan. Fleas are spread from one animal to another. And so, if you and I lived in that proverbial suburban house with a 6 or an 8 foot wall around us, our pets would never ever get fleas. But if we take our pets to a park where other dogs or other cats have been, if we take our pets on a hike where other raccoons or fox or squirrels have been, that's how they're going to get fleas. And so, if the honest truth is, if you and I wanted to prevent fleas without any pesticides whatsoever, we can do that, but only if we can keep our pets away from areas that have been traversed by other animals. So you and I would walk more on streets or on those football fields or baseball fields where animals or dogs and cats and raccoons have been less likely to wander.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's great. What about everyday toxins or environmental stresses for pet owners that we may overlook? Do you have anything that you could bring to our attention that,
I would say cleaners.
oh,
I
household
have
cleaner?
seen a number of different pets, Susan, that are allergic to or sensitive to the bleaches or the things that we wash our sheets, for instance. Now, if Rusty, like Annabelle, used to sleep with you, and Annabelle sleeps with me, so I'm not throwing too many rocks in from this very glass house that I live in. But in all seriousness, I have seen both dogs and cats who wake up with huge rashes across their belly or across their sides. And these are just dogs or cats who are very sensitive to the bleaches or the detergents or
The fragrance.
the fragrance. Yeah, any one of those can create can create health issues for our pets. And as an aside, I know from speaking to dermatologists that they can create problems for humans as well. Likewise, the carpet cleaners, any air freshener that's in the room, every one of these products can create a sensitivity issue for the pets in our care. And I'm deliberately ruling out or I'm not mentioning the ant baits, the snail baits, the actual toxins that you and I use to keep pests away from our homes, because these can absolutely be life-threateningly toxic. But sometimes, Susan, it's the simple things. It's the deodorant that you and I wear. It's the detergent that we use. It's the air fresheners in our homes that can create health risks for our pets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in closing, what are some simple daily habits that pet owners could start to do today to improve their pet's overall wellness?
Susan, that's the third wonderful question you've asked. First off, listen, feed your pet less. Understand that the thinner your pet is, the longer they will live.
Yeah,
Secondly, pay attention to what they eat. If you think that kibbles are or canned cat food, for instance, is the absolute healthiest way to eat. Let's do the research, because I would tell you that the more research you do, the more you will learn about what is healthy in the way of your pet's diet. And the third component is to find a veterinarian that you can partner with, Susan. Somebody that has the time to sit down with you and talk not just about Rusty's health or Annabelle's health, but also you. Ask you questions, learn about you, learn about what your concerns are. And the single most important question you can ask that veterinarian, Susan, is why. Why they are recommending a vaccine, why they are recommending this surgery or this medication. Because the honest truth is that we're all in this together. And if your veterinarian is reluctant to answer a why-based question, maybe you should find a different veterinarian.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great advice. Now, can someone work with you virtually if do you do consulting work or anything like that?
Absolutely, Susan. I do telemedicine concierge consults
Okay.
for our pets from one end of the country to the other.
Okay.
And here's why. And the honest truth is, listen, again, I've been a veterinarian for 40 years, so I well understand the dynamics within a general veterinary practice. But honestly, veterinarians in general practice, Susan, don't have the time and they don't have the knowledge to really sit down and discuss a longevity strategy for you and your pet. I ask you to bring veterinary records. I ask you to fill out a little bit of paperwork, and then you and I can sit down on Zoom and chat to our heart's content about how best to help your pet live longer. And so I do work with clients from California to Maine and all parts in between.
Okay, excellent. And I will get all of your information and put it in the show notes.
Thank you, Susan. And one of the things that I've just started doing is I set up, because I'm doing a couple of podcasts these days, I set up a free website for your listeners. It's called
Oh,
www.freevetcall.com. And it's just a one-page website. It's the simplest thing in the world, because all it is a link to my calendar. But if your listeners have a question about their pet's health or about
yeah.
how to help their pets live longer, whether they're dogs or cats, I would ask you just to hit www.freevetcall.com. Set up a 10 or 15-minute consult with me. There's absolutely no charge for this. We are all in this together, Susan, and I will help your listeners if I can.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that. That's a great way to end this episode. Thank you, Doctor. It was such a pleasure to meet you, Kevin. Honestly, I love the work that you're doing, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Susan, thank you very much for all you do. Your listeners are very lucky to have you in their corner, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
Thank you so much. What an inspiring and eye-opening conversation with Kevin Toman. Today's episode reminded us that our pets are so much more than companions. They are family, they're teachers, and often mirrors reflecting the health of the home that they live in. Kevin shared some really powerful insights on longevity, holistic wellness, prevention, and how small daily choices can create healthier, happier lives for both our animals and also ourselves. Whether you have a beloved pet by your side now or simply appreciate the healing bond between humans and animals, I hope this conversation encouraged you to think differently about wellness, aging, and the connection that we all share. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us and for dedicating your life to helping pets and their families thrive. And thank you to all of my wonderful listeners for tuning in to Susan Lopresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul. If today's episode touched your heart, please share it with a fellow animal lover, friend, or family member. Until the next time, remember, healing and rejuvenation can happen at any age for every member of the family, even the furry ones. Take care, be well, and I'll see you on the next episode.